Hello and welcome back to the talking point here on the Rangers Review. It's our first one of the summer. It's our first one of a new era, a new regime, a new head coach. But Stevie, it's the same old faces. How are we?
Good, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, an enjoyable show ahead, Chris. At least there's no more takeover chat. There's no more. This was actually on our to-do list, if you remember, in New York in New Year when we said, I think you said a takeover, and I said normality. You've got a takeover. Perhaps we're heading towards normality, so we can only keep our fingers crossed.
Well, fingers crossed indeed. Obviously, the main development, or one of the main developments since we last spoke, you mentioned the takeover there. The other one was the appointment of Russell Martin as head coach. We've not done a show since then. We'll just start before we get into the talking point of today, which is the Champions League and the draw and the qualifiers coming up. What did you make of Russell's presser last week? We were both at Ibrox. Obviously, he spoke, Kevin Thelwell spoke, Patrick Stewart spoke. Were you impressed, enthused, excited by what you heard?
I thought he handled it well. I thought there was a real desire by some to try and get out of him that we were going to win the league or we were going to win something. So I thought he handled it quite well. I found bits of it interesting, and for the first impression, I thought it was absolutely fine. I wasn't expecting anything groundbreaking, but now that he's here, you never really. New managers are going to say all the normal things, aren't they? They're going to say all the buzzwords and all the normal things. But I thought he handled it well, and I've looked into him. I'm kind of, I wouldn't say I've tried to get invested. I've just took an interest in what he's going to be like. What's his team going to be like? What's his style going to be like? And I'm quite enthused by how he does and what he wants to do. So I'm ready to give him a fair crack of the whip and basically try and be patient and wait to see what comes of it. But the other flip side of it is that I'm quite concerned that what the tools he's got at the moment aren't, capable of maximising him. So there's a lot of work to be done, Chris, in the coming weeks. But I think he's passed his first major scrutiny quite nicely. I mean, it must have been a whirlwind day for him because he arrived, Blue Room, presser, he met us, he met you guys, and then he done Sky, then he done Rangers, and then he done the papers, and then, so he spoke so many times, and I think he'll be glad it's out the way, done and dusted, and he can get down to the real business. How did you find him? What were your impressions?
I thought it came across well. I thought he spoke and he handled himself in the manner that I expected. I've dealt with him a couple of times at Scotland duty over the years, but not for a long time. I know a number of the boys have obviously dealt with him a lot more during his Scotland career. Can't really remember dealing with him that much during his time here as a player. Probably did, but that entire 6 month spell I'm trying to erase from my memory. But I thought he spoke well. He knows that he's not the first choice amongst the fans. He knows that there's going to be this level of doubt or scepticism or criticism in some regards. But I thought he handled that side of it well, and he's fully aware of what he's walking into, and he's fully aware of the size of this challenge. As I mentioned there, he's sat alongside Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell. We had an interview with Thelwell on the site this week. I could outline some of the key points of his role as sporting director. I know you asked him at the presser on recruitment and how that's going to work. And I don't think you can underestimate the importance of that relationship between the three. Obviously, Andrew Kavanagh as chairman, Parag Marat representing the 49ers, going to have such a huge say in Rangers as a business and as a club. They're going to set the strategy. They're going to set the ambitions. It's those three guys that are going to have to be delivering on it. They're the guys that are on the ground. Patrick from a business perspective, Kevin from a football perspective, and obviously Russell being the man that is leading Rangers from a dugout. So if all three of those guys have successful seasons in their respective areas, Rangers won't be far away. If even one of them fails, certainly the recruitment side of it, if that fails, it makes the job of the other two, and certainly Russell Martin, a lot more difficult. So that's shaping up to be so important in that regard. That all three of them, they're good individually, and they're certainly good collectively. I say that recruitment side of it, we know the scale of the work that needs done on the squad. You actually wrote about it in your article on the site last week, touching on the press conference, touching on what the squad needs. We are now less than a fortnight from Rangers returning to pre-season. We are about a month or so away, 5 weeks or so away from Rangers being back in competitive action as they return to the Champions League. Where do you see this group? I don't think I'm being controversial by saying it's nowhere near ready for Champions League football.
No, I don't think it is. I wonder if I can just venture back to your point a wee bit on Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell. I think obviously Dan Purdy, as head of recruitment, is going to come in there and be quite significant, to say the least. So I think what's important, and people that have listened to our interview with Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell and things, and it was mentioned as well, and others, that the structure around the manager must be correct, because I think when we talk about football reviews and why things have failed, quite often we've not had the correct people around. And we can't go into a position, Chris, and I'm almost repeating myself, but it's really vital for me that we don't come into a position where there's no chairman and there's no CEO for several months, and then you're worried about our physios leaving halfway through and not replacing them and stuff like that. We need to almost be seamless, that Russell Martin knows that he's got a full strength background squad behind him, and that he knows the direction of play. It shouldn't be a real, who do I need to go and get this or that. He should know, and everything should be provided for him to make sure that there's maximum concentration on the pitch. So structure is a big thing for me, and I know it's Stevie's favourite buzzword recently, but it concerns me greatly that the position the club was in with regard to personnel around the staffing levels and stuff like that. So even the academy, it needs a good proper look at. And I know that they might want to streamline things. That was discussed in your article a wee bit, I think, during the week. You're a really good one about the takeover and stuff. But, we can't not have head of academies and things like that. So the sooner all that gets sorted, the sooner we get a replacement in for Doc Waller, etc. All these things will make everybody a wee bit happier and secure. And then we can focus on exactly what your question is on what do we need and where are we in terms of numbers required. Honestly, 8 first-team starters, 6 squad players at a minimum. And that's not a one-window job. That's not me expecting, all these guys to arrive straight away. But if everybody was realistic, then I think there's maybe 3 starters at a push. And that's Diamande, Raskin, Hamza Igaman. I'm not sure after that, Chris, there's many that can command. Now, that's not to say that Jeff Day, John Souttar, James Tavernier, Connor Barron, even Oscar Cortez won't be involved in the squad in games to come. But they've still got a lot of things to prove. Will they be better with players around them and things? I think they might be. But we've got a Champions League qualifier in 3-4 weeks, as we're talking about, and maybe 4 or 5 weeks, maybe slightly longer than that. But my point being is that there's urgent positions, Chris, that need rectified. To play like Russell Martin needs, I think you need to sort that 10-stroke winger type that he plays. Those 2 positions, left and right, we currently don't have anybody. So he's looking for maximum impact there. I think we need another midfielder. As a matter of priority, a 6 needs to come in. And your defence, wow. Your defence, centre backs, left back, right back, and then there's Jack and goals. Like, what happens with Jack? Can Jack play? So the truth is that there's more positions that are pressing than others. I really think wing back and centre back you could get away, and this is not meaning to be detrimental. You could get away with getting a partner for John Souttar, having Jeff Day at left back, having Connor Barron for 1 or 2 games as a 6, and you might be able to get away with it because they've done well in midfield before, that trio and Olympiacos and stuff like that. So you might get away with that. Hamza Igaman might be able to start as your 9 if Cyril was to go, but there's nobody that can play on the wings. What is Oscar Cortez going to bring that we really know? So for me, Chris, and I'm interested to find out how you feel, But for me, 8 and 6 in the long term is where I am. And that's, by the way, I spoke about this as well. There's at least 10 players that could leave, and you wouldn't really miss them too much. The most controversial exits probably would be Jack Butland, Cyril Dessers, Nadeem Bayrami, perhaps, and Ridvan Yilmaz in terms of the squad. But the rest of them, you wouldn't miss too many. So I think there's a lot of work. It's not going to be a one-window job. But I'm keen to, what do you think? What do you think? Because we can't really make the same mistakes as last time, Chris. We weren't ready for a Champions League game. McCausland, Lawrence starting, Davis, Dowell, Wright on the bench, when we knew that they were never ever going to be part of the squad. We can't do that again, surely. So how do you, in terms of what I've said, where are you on that? And how do you make sure that we're not in that same position? Because 5 weeks, 6 weeks isn't a lot of time. I went 3, 4, 5, 6, so surely I'm right somewhere in there. But that's not a long time, is it, to get ready for it?
It's the time scale is the biggest thing that's against Rangers right now. But I think we obviously speak all the time on Rangers matters, and we're probably having the same conversation today that we did last summer, the summer before that, maybe even the summer before that, in terms of all the buzzwords. It's rebuild, it's starting from the ground up, it's rip up and start again. You can't keep going into games of this magnitude needing 12 players. I mean, to make that mistake once is bad. To then go and compound it and make it again and again. There's also been different managerial appointments. They've then got different styles. A Russell Martin team will look very different from a Clement team, hopefully. Will look very different from a Michael Beale team. Will look different from a Gio and a Gerrard team. But Rangers, they have to find a way to end this cycle. You can't go into games that are worth tens of millions of pounds so ill prepared for them. You round off a couple of the names that were involved in that Kiev game. The Rangers were better than, even though they were ill prepared for it, I still think they were a better outfit than Kiev. Now, their respective campaigns in Europe after that fixture showed that Rangers able to compete at a good level, and obviously had a run that briefly made us all start to dream of a place in the final. But they were not prepared for that game. Now, the Shefty red card obviously changes it. It was one of those nights. But the start of the season, obviously with Tynecastle coming after that, and it just Rangers never really got going at the start. And before you knew it, they were a handful of points behind. They'd suffered the Champions League blow. That had a big impact on the finances. That then impacts what work you're able to do in the window after that. You can't underestimate how important these early games are. And you can't be going into them with Robin Proper playing centre half and McCausland having to play off the left-hand side or play off the right-hand side, obviously, because Czerny's not there anymore. You can't be that ill-prepared for them, and that's the work that Rangers have to try and get through, and they have to try and get through it as quickly as possible. Because if we can look ahead to that tie, they'll find out next week who lies in wait. Panathinaikos, Bran or Servette in that second qualifying round. We'll get into the longer term now, what lies ahead after that. If you were to pick one, if you could heat a ball up in the microwave so that the guy could pick it out for Rangers, who's the one that you're picking for us?
And it probably might backfire on me. That's the problem with saying this, but I would say Servette is where I would want to be. I don't want a trip to Panathinaikos in that weather and that heat and that journey. Nope, I'm not fancying that. I wouldn't want to go to Bran because I think, if I'm right, they're still playing their football and they're midway through their season. Mm-hmm. So they'll be hot and ready to go. Servette, we at least know what to expect. And I think that's as best an option as we can, because let's be honest with us. We are going to be bedding in so many players. We're going to be bedding in a new style, probably a new formation, certainly from what we played before. And a number of players who might be in limbo, because I wouldn't be surprised, Chris, in what I talked about, getting away with certain players, that Cyril Dessers might be here for that Champions League qualifier, but by the end of September he might not be. Same with Jack Butland. So these are things that, and even Ridvans and your players like that. So they might be, they might really surprise us or woo the manager into a second opportunity or whatever you might think. But these are all the things that we've got to go to. So Servette for me, is at least a fighting chance. Now, I think Russell Martin's up against it immediately because of the situation he's in and because of his recruitment and trying to embed a style. I'm going to be really defeatist here, and that's not meaning to be. But if we go out, we go out. We shouldn't be overreacting to it because of the nature of what he's got to deal with. And I don't want to use the old word patience, and I'm certainly going to not use the word project, because we have to win, and he's aware of that, and we have to win immediately. And it's up to Kevin Thelwell and it's up to Russell Martin to make sure that we're ready for that. But if we're not and we don't qualify overall, see the 5 million extra bonus you get for progressing through the levels. I think you need to go through 2 stages to get to that level. We need to make sure that happens this year, because that was catastrophic last year for the season, for the mood, and everything that was going on with the stadium and everything like that. So we need to make sure that we don't fall in that trap. So if we get Servette and get past that, it might generate a wee bit of early momentum as well, a wee bit of goodwill, a wee bit of good feeling around Russell Martin. That's what I'm hoping for. This guy, he's got a style. We've seen a few good players. Who else is coming in? Who's next up? It might just generate a wee bit of excitement. If we don't win and we're papped out and then everybody's a bit doom and gloom, I don't want that side of it. So it's a big game, Chris. It's a really, really big game. How defining is it for Russell Martin? Because I don't want it to be defining for him. This is my issue. I don't want people to judge him immediately. I'm the world's worst. You know me, less patience than goodness knows, but I've got to kind of rein that in and realise. And I think it's a real mind change for me as well, because it's different everything, isn't it? It's different formation, it's different attitude. We're going to be playing football under Russell Martin that we've maybe not seen. We've got so many players to come in. I can't sit here and criticise this squad and then expect him to go and qualify. But defining wise, I'd like a good start for him. Even if we don't qualify for the big one overall, because maybe that is a step too far. If we can get through those stages, get that money, qualify for the Europa straight into the groups, I would be reluctantly saying, right, okay, that's okay. Depending on how we go out and who we go out to, obviously. But how defining do you think it is? And do you think any of that is fair in terms of what I was saying about expectation?
I think it's different for Russell this summer than it was for Clement last summer. Russell's coming in and there's so much work needs done, short space of time. He's just into the club. Clement was going into those games on the back of having already had a few months at the club, obviously. And he had that time to get his ideas across the squad, had his time to prepare for those Champions League games. So I'd be less critical if Rangers were to go out at that first hurdle, obviously around earlier than last summer. I would be less critical of Russell than I was of Clement, just because of, as you've outlined well there, the situation that he has, that he's walked into and what he's found himself walking into. I think it's easy for fans to say, we're Rangers, we should be beating teams like this. Very easy to write clubs off. I don't think you can take anything for granted at this stage. If you look through the rounds and who Rangers could come up against, it really doesn't get any easier for them. I think that to get to the group stages of the Champions League, it would be a remarkable achievement, given everything that Russell has to deal with. It'd be really quite something if he was able to get through all of these rounds and get into the Champions League. We've got a piece on the site over the weekend from the guys at Scotland's Coefficient. You'll have seen their work on social media, a really in-depth read on where Rangers are in terms of their coefficient, how this qualifying campaign will look. And one of the things that stood out for me was actually looking at Rangers' place in the club coefficient rankings. So as the guys write for us, they're saying they are currently 25th in that particular league table, if you like, which is their highest ranking since 2008, when obviously Walter Smith's side got to the UEFA Cup final. That shows just how important their results in Europe have been over recent seasons. The downside of that recent run, obviously going back to Steven Gerrard's time, because it's on this 5-year rolling total, Rangers will lose their points from 2021. In that season, with 13 European matches under Gerrard, only lost one, a defeat to Slavia Prague in the Europa League last 16. So that's taken a big chunk of their points off, and it makes it more difficult to climb that particular ranking table again. Now we know it's not quite as important this year because of the new seeding structure. So obviously previously you had the pots, and if you were in pot 2, it was more beneficial than being in pot 3. That's not quite the same under this new format, but it does give you an idea of where Rangers are in European terms, and how they could potentially go through these paths. As you look at those 3 teams, Panathinaikos, Servette, and Brann, I think you're right. I think Servette are the one that ideally you would want. If you get through and you're then into QR3, on form, the three unseeded sides, or the 4 unseeded sides, sorry, could be Salzburg, Fenerbahce, Victoria Pilsen, and Nice. That's not exactly a gimme at that stage either. Now, obviously, Rangers know all about Fenerbahce and know all about Nice. You potentially fancy your chances. Pilsen and Salzburg, not going to be easy. And if they get through, we're on the best case scenario, if they get through the playoff, it could be Benfica or Club Brugge. So that's what I was saying there. I think Russell's chances of getting to the playoff round, I think that would be a really impressive achievement. If he was to somehow take Rangers into the Champions League, given everything that we've just spoken about there, it would be quite something. And you talk about being defining, that would certainly, you would imagine, get the doubters and some of the critics and some of the sceptics. That would be an achievement that would certainly get people on board, surely.
Without doubt, I don't know if you know.
Even for Rangers fans that are notoriously hard to please, surely that would win people over.
Just as well, I'm very easy to please and very laid back, but I mean, if he manages to do it, some of the names there, I must admit, had me wincing a wee bit. I know that we managed to. I mean, it depends, doesn't it? I mean, this period before it actually comes to it, I know we've got a couple of bounce games in there as well, but we really need to get the bodies in to be able to be ready for that. And I think that here's the thing: see if you do get a couple of exciting forwards in that can play those positions, they do get a couple of centre halves. The crowd will naturally be up for it anyway. Russell Martin said he expected 1 or 2 in by then. I really suspect that was a line from him to play down expectations. I think I thought 1 or 2 is like, kids at Christmas. It would be nice to have 1 or 2 presents, but I think Russell Martin will know full well that he deserves more. And if somehow he pulled that off, I don't even know. I was trying to listen to the names in the second pot. Where would you really like to go? Would you go to Nice again and try and play them, knowing that they'll be so much more focused and up for it because it's not a league game that they can maybe afford to slack off a wee bit in? Would you take Victoria Pilsen and do that kind of journey and know how difficult that area is and everything else? I'm not sure you would. Fenerbahce, I wouldn't want them again. Jose will be on a mission to right that wrong in his mind. And then, you look into it, Club Brugge, who we play in a couple of weeks in a friendly, that definitely is a couple of weeks. They would probably be better than Benfica, wouldn't they? Who we've had many run-ins with, and 2-2 and 3-3, I think it turned out to be last time. And then the other game was a 2-2 draw and then a defeat at home, wasn't it? So we've played them so many times recently. I don't think we've bettered them. I think there have been 3 draws and a defeat potentially. I need to double check that off memory. So, I mean, that's really difficult as well, isn't it? I think in both times, I think we were 2-0 up at home when Kamar Roof scored that really nice one. And then we were 3-1 up against 10 men away, and we botched it up in the last couple of minutes under Stephen. So, and then there was a kind of ding-dong away game where I think Connor scored a brilliant own goal as well, didn't he? So, in that 2-2 match. So, listen, it would be kind of dreamland if we did manage to get there. At least, see if they do get there, and by the time that comes round, mid-August potentially, isn't it? You've got you're 2 months away from that, and maybe then the team looks more settled. But there's a whole new ideology here in play that this isn't going to be patient build-up. This isn't going to be passing. This is, he wants to dominate in the final thirds. And ideally you would have wanted some games against Scottish teams to bed that in and try and get them going, but they won't have that. And it's going to be really interesting to see how quickly he can get his ideas over, how quickly he can get his players in to be ready for that, Chris. So there's so many. On the face of it, Russell Martin shouldn't have a chance. That's the God's honest truth. When it comes to Servette, Panathinaikos or Bran, he shouldn't have a hope, because we're asking a guy to get a team ready in the space of potentially 30 days and then get signings in and get everything ready for that, Chris. I think it's an extremely tall order. I hope there's not an overreaction to whatever happens, because we're either so high or we're so low. So I think and hope that Russell isn't defined by that. And listen, I think we've all got our doubts over Russell Martin and the style, and worried about defensively. There's been a lot of talk about that. But now that he's here, you just have to try and embrace it and get behind him. I don't think I've seen a style like we might be about to see. Obviously, Dick Advocat was very attacking and dominant, but nobody played the way that he is outlining that he wants to play and has done in the past. Do you remember seeing a Rangers manager? We don't like seeing it, but Postecoglou is probably the best equivalent that we've seen in this league in a long time. And obviously, it took him a while. I remember he got beaten his first game at Hearts. He had trouble in Europe and things like that, and people were kind of rejoicing. We might need to have the same level of patience, because to implement that is difficult. And wasn't it the Swansea boy that said on Rangers Review, first couple of months could be terrible, you could be pulling your teeth out, but then when it clicks and it's really good. So there's no quick fix, that's for sure. So
that style point, that's one of my fears, if you like, about Russell Martin in terms of how that translates to European football. Will Rangers be too open? Will they be too easy to play against, too easy to play through against a higher quality of team? Now, he speaks about dominating the ball. You mentioned they're dominating the final third, pressing teams high, winning the ball back, creating chances, scoring goals. That could be the answer that Rangers have been looking for. Now, how many times have we spoken about that lack of intensity, that lack of creativity, that lack of goals over recent seasons? Domestically, it could just work. It might be the ideal solution that Rangers have been looking for. In Europe, they set up very differently, and they've had their success by playing very differently. How does Russell Martin's style translate to European football? He doesn't know, because he's never done it. He's never been a manager at that level, and that's it's a huge step into the unknown. Again, it could work against some of the lesser teams in these earlier qualifying rounds. It could potentially work. You could then get to a group stage and find out that life is a lot more difficult here. And it sounds bad to say it. It could almost be a blessing if Rangers don't get to the Champions League. Now, we know the huge financial ramifications of it. We know what it would mean for the club. Could it almost be better, for Russell's sake, go and learn in a Europa League phase, go and pit yourself against a higher calibre of coach, higher calibre of team, but not the top teams, not the ones that could really cause you some problems. Now, I think if Broncos suffered from that in that Champions League, Rangers weren't ready for Champions League football. I'd be amazed if Rangers are anywhere near ready for Champions League phase football this season. So I think a Europa League campaign would not be a bad thing for them. Even that's not given them. You drop down the levels, even depending on what stage of Champions League they drop down at. You could even face a qualifier just to get into the Europa League. Worst case scenario is there's no European football at all. That's the nightmare scenario. Which, if we're facing that one, we'll come back on here in a few weeks and we can discuss what the ramifications of that are. But there is a scenario where Rangers could have no European football at all if they're to lose all their ties. I don't think that'll happen. I think they should be strong enough to at least have some form of European football. Ironically, if they dropped into the Conference League, the expectation would be, well, Russell, you have to go and win it. It's only the Conference League, and he'd find himself in that situation. So, talk about walking into a no-win scenario for a new Rangers head coach.
I know it's never great. I was laughing when you were talking about qualifying for the Champions League. Could you imagine getting Paris Saint-Germain, given the way that they looked against Inter in that final I watched with awe and their quality and their players, and it's taken them to go from the kind of Galacticos down to, and I know they've still spent a lot of money, but maybe not the household names as such as your Neymars and your Messis and everything else, and then to produce a performance like that. Am I keen to play them? I'm not so sure. So yeah, it's exciting times, Chris. Hopefully, though, by the time we do get back together in a few weeks, we'll be kind of previewing, I should imagine, Bruges at home and how does it look then. And I've got to be honest with you, in the space of 2 weeks, this might be slightly optimistic, but I would hope in the space of 2 weeks there's 5 arrivals, and that, I think, listen, it might be optimistic, but would be taking us towards the kind of 26th of June. I would hope for 5 arrivals. The players would have been back a couple of days. Let's see how accurate that is, and let's see if we've made any inroads. I certainly hope it's not a case of nobody's arrived. That wouldn't be great. But could 5 or so come in the next few weeks? Is that optimistic? We'll find out.
If that's not a teaser for the next talking point, I don't know what is. A chance to see if Stevie Clifford is right or wrong. 99% of the time he is right. So there's a spoiler for you. So we will reconvene in a couple of weeks. Thanks as always for joining us here on the show. And there will be many more of these to come over the course of the season. And as you know by now, as always, I have to end with a plug for the rest of the great content that we do here on the YouTube channel. If you want to hear more from myself and Stevie, and from Derek, Josh and Johnny, join us on the morning briefing every morning. Stevie outlined there, the games will be back soon, and we will have full coverage from every press conference. We will be live pre and post match every game as well. And of course, check out the website where we still have our deal, £1 for 6 months of the best Rangers journalism. If that's not a sell, I don't know what is. So Stevie, thanks for your time as always. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.